Second up is major transformation. So it works the same as it did before, but it's now a 10-foot cube instead of a 5-foot cube, and you can actually split these cubes up. They have to be contiguous or connected, but they can now be, I don't know, like a fence, that's 40 feet long or something like that. I don't know. You might want to do that. And this isn't a change. This piece that's now highlighted, it actually works the same in both versions, but I wanted to highlight it because it says you change it into another non-magical object of similar size and mass and of equal or lesser value. Okay. Why am I calling that out? I consulted and double checked my thoughts with, the physicists that I have on my Discord server. And yeah, when you say similar size, now there's the word similar, so let's leave that aside for a second. When you say same size and mass, you're also imposing the same density restriction on it, right? Because something that has the same size and mass must also have the same density. One of those has to change if you want a different density. And if it's the same density, you probably can't even change its material type. So, like, let's look at comparing metals, right? Here's a list of some metals. Here's their density in pounds per square inch, and you can see they change pretty fast. So now let's get back to that word similar. Like, how close do these have to be to say it's similar? Is it a 5% variance? Is it a 50% variance? A 100% variance? Because going from something like aluminum to gold is like an 8x increase or a 7x increase, right? Going from aluminum to lead is like a 5x increase, right? you know you can't make any change to a material or you're going to change its density, which is going to change either its size or its mass. And what's the you know primary thing you're going to want to do with this is something like, I don't know, you're stuck in a jail cell and you want to turn the stone wall into sand. Well, you can't because sand has a much lower density than stone. Or you want to turn the iron bars into like feathers. Well, you can't. That's a very different density, same size but very, very low mass. Like, you can't make any of those changes, and that's some of the first things that jump into your mind. Now, maybe the very, very first thing that jumps in your mind is, I'm going to take lead and turn it into gold, which is actually what the whole stone thing is based on, right? The concept of the transmuter stone is based on the legend of the philosopher's stone, that back hundreds of years ago they thought that if you had this stone, it was the catalyst that would allow you to actually, and this was, I mean, a legend, I don't know if you call this mythology, they actually thought this, that you could use it to turn lower value metals like lead into silver or gold. And that was the legend. If you could figure out how to find or get or acquire this, they called it philosopher's stone, which is why this thing's a stone. It was called the philosopher's stone. If you could get that, then you could use it as a catalyst for these transformations. And that's what all of alchemy was based on, was trying to figure out how to do that. And alchemy was the precursor to modern day chemistry and metallurgy and all kinds of pharmacology, things like that. So that's where it all comes from, and that's why there's a whole stone concept here, right? So the very first idea might be turning something into gold, but you can't, because it says it has to be of equal or lesser value. So you can lower the value, but you can't increase the value. Now it does say you can change it from one object into another object, not just the object's material composition. But the limitation of similar size and mass is too restrictive and too cumbersome. You want to change a wagon into a boat. Well, how do you decide and figure out, like, how much you're going to have to look up to figure out, do these weigh the same? Are they the same length and depth and occupy the same volume? So even that's handicapped by these restrictions. And my recommendation is they should remove the word mass. All right. Similar size is good enough, and equal or lesser value is good enough. You've prevented those scenarios where somebody's going to abuse this and exploit it and make themselves super rich. They can't, because it's got to be equal or lesser value. Similar size. All right. It's a large sized wagon. Turn it into a large sized boat. Great. Good enough. Just remove the word mass so that, it's either, DMs are not trying to enforce that and say, well, they got to weigh the same. Now you got to figure out how much do these things weigh. And it's just messing with that. Like, that just causes a world of pain. It doesn't help, and it makes this much harder to use and utilize, which we just don't need, right? It's already pretty niche. Even if they remove that, this is a very niche circumstantial feature. How often are you going to want to turn a boat into a wagon or a wagon into a boat, which is perhaps like the I don't know, one of the primary use cases are you're going to turn like a table into a chest, I guess, and hide something in it, but the chest has to be the same, size and mass as the table. So how do you figure that out? I don't know. Like this is pretty circumstantial already. Take the word mass off, make it just a little bit more user friendly and a little less cumbersome and awkward. And even then, I still think it's not a great feature.